All right. Well, we are back on the Zoomcast. This is SANDCAST, Beach Volleyball with Bourne and Travis Mewhirter. And today we got two of my good friends. We got Michelle Meyer and Megan Burgdorf of Beach Volleyball Consulting. How's it going, ladies?
Good. We're happy to be on. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. Michelle, I'm just so excited that we've kind of come full circle. We've made the gap from meeting at snow volleyball in Austria and Italy to now we're getting on the podcast, and it's where all great relationships are formed, on snow volley.
Yeah, I think so. Good time in Italy last year for sure.
Yeah. So can you guys just give our listeners sort of an introduction of what Beach Volleyball Consulting is, sort of how it was founded, a little bit of backstory. I wouldn't want to kind of just take your mission statement from the website, kind of want you guys to give the listeners a little bit of background, what it is, what its mission statement is, and where we're going with it. Yeah,
I'll kick off, Michelle, and then I'll kick it over to you. Michelle and I met at USA Volleyball running their Beach High Performance program. So that was in 2015. And we did a lot of work and initiatives under that auspice, but there were some things that were left undone that we were so excited about that either we didn't have time to do or the remit. So when they relocated the offices to Colorado, I decided to stay here in lovely Hermosa Beach. And Michelle and I got back together and decided to open up Beach Volleyball Consulting, which supports our athletes, coaches, and organizers. It's a super exciting new kind of endeavor. We really liked being neutral in the sport and being able to help everybody. And so that was something that we wanted to bring forward in our new company.
Yeah, and it's you guys do so many different things. And you mentioned that when you were at USA and it moved to Colorado, there were a couple of things that were left undone that you guys kind of wanted to see finished or kind of at least developed or grown. What were some of those things that you saw that were a little bit shortchanged or that you wanted to grow and develop at USA that you're sort of completing at Beach Volleyball Consulting?
Yeah, Michelle, you want to go or you want me to kick off?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things that we wanted to tackle, we all know that there's been a ton of growth and development around the sport of beach volleyball over the past decade because of the addition of beach volleyball as a collegiate sport. And one of the avenues that we wanted to get after this year, which unfortunately ended up being canceled due to COVID, but we wanted to offer an international camp and clinic for those European recruits that potentially might want to come over and compete in NCAA. That was one of them. I don't know, Megan.
Yeah, I think that was really exciting, and it looks like we have a lot of things going on because we've had to pivot with COVID times, I guess, to make things more timely with the recruiting schedules changing in college programs, and also partnering with the AVCA. So in December, we were at the AVCA Coaches Convention, which was awesome. And they finally tapped the topic of men's collegiate beach because women's has been so successful, both domestically, and now we're seeing how that impact transfers to the international game. And so we partnered with AVCA in February to drive the strategy to grow men's collegiate beach volleyball. So that's something exciting.
Awesome.
Very, very different. And we're happy to hear what you guys have to think about it too.
One thing. Hold on, try.
You're on mute.
Yeah, try. I think you muted yourself.
Oh. There it is.
Hey, welcome back.
Sorry, everybody. I think that's awesome. I mean, obviously, it'd be really cool. I feel like it would just make the sport in general grow twice as fast if we could have men's in there as well. But I didn't even think it was an option. Like, I was like, maybe one day, but like 20 years, like long after I'm gone. But the fact that there's conversations being had right now is really exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, your impact report was awesome, by the way, and kudos to you guys for doing that. Because like, as from a beach volleyball nerd to another, like that's the kind of stuff that I like love to read. And we've seen the impact that the college game has had on the women's side. It's insane, and we'll get into that in a little bit. What I'm wondering for the men's side is, do you think that it's realistic that men's college beach will be a thing, really? Because I know it's difficult for men's sports to be added with Title IX, and especially it's difficult for any sports to be added with, especially with COVID right now, with the football season being, kind of in question with how much revenue they'll bring in. So what I'm wondering is if, what would men's beach look like? Would it be past the club level, NCAA level?
Yeah. Well, right now there's activity happening on all levels. And I think that's the awesome thing, that there's passionate coaches, there's players that want to get involved. What's missing is that formal umbrella. And USA stepped in to kindly fill that with the Collegiate Beach Championships. But that happened in May. That was postponed and canceled, unfortunately, this year. So that was the one opportunity that, independent of being a JC, NAIA, Division 1, 2, or 3, any male collegiate athlete could participate in. So we're really hopeful that USA and their Collegiate Beach national team umbrella will help bridge that gap for a more formal collegiate program, likely with the NAIA to start up going forward. So trying to build consolidating efforts in the next year or two. Hopefully, women's beach, Michelle, how long did it take to formalize in college? About 10 years?
To become NCAA sport, I think it was 4 years. Officially in 2016, I think was the first championship. So 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, so 5 years. So hopefully we can expedite the learnings that they've had. It's going to be a challenge, though. You're dead right about Title IX. And I think we have a silver lining around emerging sports for men with the pandemic and growing enrollment. So a lot of universities right now are struggling to have more male students coming. So that's a good way if there's a new sport that encourages more male athletes to join their programs.
I'm wondering, what's the last men's sport colleges have added? I can't
rifle, I think in like 1990 or something crazy. What was it, Michelle? We Googled it. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Geez, I'll have rifle for 400, Alex. I was not expecting that one.
Yeah,
I think the idea.
It's been a really long time. Volleyball was around, and then they added, the indoor and men's and stuff like that. But the last true addition, I think, was definitely way back. Yeah. Probably before half of you were born.
I think the idea and the plan for men's collegiate beach volleyball, like right now, as Megan said, we have some JCs that are doing it. We have some NAIA programs, and just to put some structure around it and start somewhere and build kind of that hype and that idea that like this is coming and you're showing value to the NCAA that people want this, that boys want to play this. And hopefully if it can start there on like a couple year long, 3 years of that, and then have those kids who have been competing in college, men's beach, come out and start competing on the domestic tour for the AVP, and we can create, hopefully in 5 years, another impact report that shows that kind of progress, and then in time be able to present something to the NCAA that shows the value of it, and that this is something that can drive growth in the university, like Megan said, but also has an advantages coming out for those kids. So
are there go ahead, try.
I was just going to say, women's beach it was the fastest growing sport in the history of the NCAA, right? Yeah. So there's got to be some interest there from the NCAA and wondering at least like how the men's would work, maybe to that same extent. Obviously, women's volleyball is played more broadly, and it's the biggest sport in the U.S. for women, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So there's that, but there's got to be some interest there, I would think. And they haven't added a sport in 30 years? Come on.
It's actually even hard to find information online about how to have an emerging sport. They have it for women, very well documented, but not for men. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, another kind of advantage or potential for men's beach is that the cost is so minimal, like especially for campuses that have already built courts on campus. They have the balls and the equipment. I think that there's some blockers in terms of if indoor players can cross over to play beach for the NCAA. I'm not sure if we found that exact ruling, Megan, but that's kind of what we've been hearing. So like the barriers to entry in terms of cost are pretty low for the sport compared to adding something like, I don't know, basketball, where you need to add a gym potentially if you don't already have it on campus or whatnot. So
That's a good point.
Yeah, I remember looking through LSU's breakdown of sports finances, and like the LSU beach program costs like $700,000 to run, where like basketball programs were well into the millions. I was like, well, I mean, 700,000 is not a small amount of money, but I guess relatively speaking, on a scale, it was like the cheapest program they had.
Yeah, and this upcoming season, to be defined or determined, NAIA is meant to have 25 women's programs. So I mean, there's already 25 courts or facilities that are being used already. So if we can maybe even find programs like Weber down in Florida that already has a women's program and they're looking to start a men's program, hopefully that will grow. We're looking at kind of a cluster or hubs across the country too, which is super exciting. So we have some started on the East Coast, some started on the West Coast. Arizona's trying to explore the area too. So I think the biggest thing that we found, we have an awesome steering committee, ranging from the AVP, P1440, all the way down to our coaches and players advocating. And what's fascinating with the coaches that are already working together is that they didn't realize there's a network of support that's out there. And if we can have that one point of truth where people are coming together and understand that there's events for collegiate men, even if it's just a pair from a university, a lot are being very creative in ways that are maybe not as traditional on the women's side, but they're making it happen, which is exciting.
I would have 1,000% signed up if I had any opportunity to play any beach in college, for sure. I think
they have scholarships now too, and a travel budget for men's beach at these schools. It's incredible.
Really? So they have so what schools, and a couple questions, like what schools do have them right now? You said there might be like 25, or you're looking at 25?
There's 25 women's NAIA programs for beach this upcoming season. Right now we have Stevenson, Liberty, Irvine, Westcliff, and there's one more for men's.
Is that Stevenson in Maryland?
Yes, it is.
Nice. That's right down the road from where I grew up.
And St. Catherine's is the last one. So these universities or schools have already started. Some have already been intermixing, and almost all were coming to the Collegiate Beach Championships that USAB hosted in May.
Nice.
So it's starting. There's a number of JCs that are happening, already started in California and around the country too.
And why is the NAIA level the I guess the best starting grounds for it? Is it sort of like a proof of concept thing for the NCAA to say, okay, like this is possible, then it can kind of trickle up, sort of?
I think it's less restrictions, more openness and flexibility of terms and rules. Okay. I don't know, Michelle, am I missing anything that jumps out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that there's a lot of blockers in the NCAA, like all the rules and restrictions, and in terms of adding programming, it is way, way difficult. That's why there hasn't been a men's sport added in 30 years in the NCAA. So NAIA has a little bit less, and it's it almost goes, I feel like instead of a blanket maybe statement from NAIA, it kind of goes like program to program and what sports they want to add. I don't know, that's just been what seems to be the easier route to start with.
Yeah. That's super cool though. What what's the starting point research wise to find this? Because you guys have tackled so many subjects at such an in-depth level too. What's the starting point for looking up men's collegiate beach? Because I feel like that's just the forgotten about stepchild.
Yeah, I mean, what we really started looking at was when we were building out this impact report and looking at the influence of NCAA that for the women on our domestic and international tours, putting that together back in November and putting it out in December, and all the feedback we got from everyone, like, holy moly, look at like the differences are astounding. I don't know if you guys had much time to look through it and kind of from 2013 to 2019 and the comparison of the men and women domestically in terms of, you know, age and finishes, and then also looking at our international tour. And then ABCA's executive director, Kathy DeVore, reached out to us and had this project and said, hey, do you guys want to take this on? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of a twofold thinking, like what can happen now to generate momentum and keep that going, because you have to connect the boys to the college level, to the men's game. And then you also have to look at a more formalized structure of lobbying to actually make it a sport. So kind of with the steering committee that we're working with is how can we make something happen? And we had a pretty good idea for 2020 until, you know, the coronavirus happened. So we've had to pivot a little bit and seeing what we're on hold really to see what we can salvage for the fall. We have a few kind of ideas or events on the back burner that we'd like to have happen. One being there's a collegiate women's event scheduled in the beginning of November. If that can happen, seeing if we can piggyback that with a men's opportunity, which also then shows to our community they happen side by side, just like the Collegiate Beach Championships. Everyone's like, oh, I didn't know we had men's collegiate beach. It's on this, you know, TV. And it's like, no, we don't, but we do. And to really gain exposure and really help that USAV Collegiate Beach national team and their pipeline initially, while we can get that leverage on the ground for the collegiate side.
The men's collegiate beach championship is so funny to me because I'm pretty good friends with John Justice and Adam Wiankowski at Florida State, and they neither of them play indoor. So they're just like two guys from Florida State who are just like, yep, let's just sign up and play. And we're representing Florida State, even though they don't actually compete in anything else for Florida State. It's they just get their one event.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm hoping to see that we can get more. What I'm wondering is, because I feel like soccer has a similar problem. Not that like it's an NCAA sport and everything, but our soccer is obviously lagging with the rest of the world. And then you look at what Norway is doing with Topvolley and that academy. I feel like that would be such a cool route to go down if someone could just like make a similar concept happen in the U.S. But there's just so many rules and restrictions for that.
Yeah, I actually got to go out to Topvolley 6 years ago when I was coaching at UH, because the Moles kind of run that or started that facility, I think, and Hendrick played at UH, so I went out there and checked it out, and it was amazing to look at this. I mean, it's indoor and beach volleyball, but they have an outdoor beach volleyball facility, an indoor beach volleyball facility, heated sand. Kare, the dad, has his like net system that runs across the whole length of the gym for like the littles that come out and play. It's just a really, really cool spot.
That's awesome. What was like what did the school look like? Because it's an educational thing too, right?
We didn't spend too much time at the school, but it was little, because I think from my understanding of it, the kids who are 13 years old, about in 8th grade, if they want to be volleyball players in Norway, like top volleyball players, they try out to go to the Topvolley school, and they select 10 to 15 boys and 10 to 15 girls per class, and it's a 3-year program. So the school is only about 60 to 90 kids overall, and so they've got their dorm rooms there, and they've got a cafeteria here, and they've got like 2 classrooms, and then everything else, it's like a track and a gym and a beach volleyball courts. I mean, it sounds like it, and it's in the middle of Sand, Norway, which is convenient, but walking distance, probably like 20 minutes to the nearest little town. Like, they're pretty secluded up there on this little hill, but it's beautiful.
My kind of spot.
Yeah.
Explains a lot. Like the fact that they're training. I mean, I'm picturing the next Mole boy coming up, like probably in the next few years here. He's going to be a trouble to deal with.
And they've got a little girl too. Hopefully she'll come up and play.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I remember Anders talking about his little brother, and he's like, he's going to be better than I am. Like, oh shit.
Yeah, great. I played Anders when he was like 18, and I was like, oh, this is easy. In a grand slam, and then they beat us. It's like, who the hell is this kid? Great. I hope I don't not like one of the first teams to draw his little brother. So crazy.
So it's up to you ladies to find the Anders Moles and Christian Sorums of USA.
Yeah.
We've been hunting. What'd you say, Troy?
I said you gotta call me when you find out.
I'll give you the scoop.
Shoot him a text.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. I think you go back to Adam and Clay and John Justice out in Florida, and really going through USA, representing USA at the Collegiate, the World University Championships and the U19, it paved a pathway that other boys kind of believed that there was something for them. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is showing somebody there's a pathway and there's progression and why they can commit, and that there is an opportunity at the end of that. And I think that's where USA serves a really big role, and I think where these universities eventually can step into too. Because once there's a place that they know, like Michelle and I found at USAV when we were there, once the boys realize there's other ballers there at that training or that camp, more are coming. Because it's like, oh, this isn't just playing with the girls. This is actually about the boys. And I get to play against some men, and they get to improve their skills. And boys were starting to peak a little bit later than the girls. The girls were peaking across the country around U15. Boys were U17 into U19, and they were figuring themselves out. So I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity. I think finding something that connects and unites the efforts of all these little pockets across the country is going to be key. And it's unfortunate BVCA just announced that they're canceling their club tournament this summer. Those are type of activities that would really help connect the glue from the boys then up to the collegiate age.
We're just we're getting one more year to brainstorm and to think tank it. That's exactly.
All. We get to press pause and come back bigger, better, stronger.
Exactly. What were you going to say, Michelle, before I interrupted you?
I was just going to say, though, it's I think it all feeds back into, unless we have that carrot of NCAA Beach for boys and scholarships, or even NAIA, something that offers a scholarship and education. Like, I think Troy is the prime example of an athlete that grew up playing on the beach at Outrigger, and then, if beach was an option in college, you probably would have done that, but you have to play indoor, and then after that you want to go make money playing professionally, and then you come to the beach at 25. I don't know what age you went full-time beach, but it's something that's like, you miss those kind of 7 years of development on the beach because you have to, because you're not going to just start shelling out money as an 18-year-old paying for your education if you can get it paid for. Even though there's limited scholarship on the indoor side, at least there's something for the boys to go and play. So
yeah, no, I mean, I didn't even get scholarship indoors, so any opportunity I would have taken for sure to go play beach. Obviously, you want to go to if I get the offer to go play indoor at USC and go to school there versus like nothing and go into a smaller school, that would have been something I had to weigh. But I mean, I for sure would have been one of those kids who would have benefited a lot from having that extra 4, 5, 6 years playing, like getting coached. I don't think I got coached until I was like 22 years old. I never even heard a little bit of advice on the beach. It was just all playing with my friends.
Good thing you had talented friends to play with growing up, huh? Yeah. Not a bad group.
I happened to grow up in like the little hot spot of the world of beach volleyball, besides Sand Norway. But no, I for sure would have taken advantage of, and I'd be stoked if other kids had the opportunity to do that. And I think they would. I think there's a lot of players whose games are, I mean, we all know indoor is a sport where you specialize. You're supposed to specialize in one skill, but those guys who are good at all the skills and not necessarily great at one or the other could be a great beach player. And that's a lot of players. So, I mean, I can't imagine there not being a good amount of really talented players coming out at a young age. And then by the time they get to the pro tour, it's like us older guys are in trouble, which is what we want. We want to be pushed, and we want it to be really, really hard to get into main draws. And then that's what's going to bring the fans and the competition. And so, I mean, the sport will blow up from there.
Yeah. That's our hope too.
I'm on board.
It's funny to see just the narrative of what constitutes young for men in the United States as compared to the world. Because I'm working on a story on Taylor Crabb right now for the FIVB, and the way that I look at Taylor, I'm like, oh, he's like one of the youngest defenders in best up and coming defenders in the country, but he's 5 years older than Christian Sorum. And it's just funny how Taylor's probably got another 12 years of really good volleyball in him. But really start like the up and coming, he's at 27. That's like standard in the US. Whereas, you look at Brazil, George Wanderley was out there when he was like 18 or 19, and, Andre Loyola, and, you got Christian and Anders. And it's just funny to see that the US just starts too late because we don't really have that developmental system. I'm wondering, how much do you think it would help, and really if it would be of a huge benefit? Because even though the US players peak later, and traditionally we always have, we've still managed to be pretty good. Because Phil Dahlhauser's still, a top 2-3 blocker in the world, and he's almost 40.
I don't think I would have, because I remember in high school I played in a tournament. Actually, maybe I was going into college. I played in Hawaii again. Kevin Wong played, and he thought I did really good. It was a KOB, and we met in the finals and gave him a run for his money. And then he invited me out to play in an exhibition, like a professional exhibition, because Matt Olson wasn't available or whatever. And then last minute, Matty O was available, so I didn't get to go play. But I think I could have played at that age and for sure gotten on tour a lot earlier. So I think, it's really a result of the system that makes Americans peak later.
Yeah.
I also, to your other point of the world seeing a 27-year-old as an old veteran.
Yeah.
I had a sponsorship. I was talking with Red Bull about sponsorship, and Phil Dahlhauser kind of recommended me and put in a good word for me. And I thought I had everything in, and then they went to corporate in Austria, the head Red Bull area, and they shut it down. The US Red Bull wanted to sign me, but Austria shut it down because they said I was too old. I'm the youngest guy out here.
I know, you're a little pup.
I'm the young guy. What are you talking? I lost the Red Bull sponsorship because I'm too old? And because all I've been hearing is that I'm the young guy, and I felt like I was the youngest guy on the world tour for the Americans. But that was at 27 years old, I think, around there, which is crazy. And now I'm 30, and I'm I'm over the hill. not really. I still feel really young for the U.S. John Hyden's still playing. He's 17 years old. He's keeping us all young. But it is amazing how the perspective is so different from the other side of the world.
Yeah. Especially if you give these young guys the experiential learning window of, 18 to 22, 23, where they're not just learning the skills, they're learning the strategy and the volleyball IQ and what that would do to expedite their game,
Yeah.
Yeah, even the travel and the, how to be a professional athlete. Our NCAA system kind of holds the hands of so many young kids from the 18 to 21 and just saying, okay, here's your plane ticket. You're checking for their ID is the only thing they're responsible for. Other than that, the coach does everything. Practice now, trainer now, strength conditioning, everything is so structured that that's another issue that Megan and I are running into with a lot of the college girls who are coming out now and pursuing professional beach volleyball on the domestic tours. Wait, I have to now hire a coach and I figure out my strength and conditioning and all my own scheduling, my budgeting, all of that kind of stuff. That's just there's no structure around that or no education until you get in and you just kind of figure it out for yourself.
That was one thing that when I was on the road with Sarah Sponsel and Kelly Clays last year, I was talking to them about it. And because Sarah went straight from Gulf Shores to Rio or Itapema. I think it was the 4-star in Itapema. And then she was gone for 3.5 months just on the road. And she was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just sort of winging this thing. And it's not like Kelly had been doing it for a long time either. So she was like, I just had to kind of figure it out on the fly. But that's also another element of what you guys do with Beach Volleyball Consulting too, right? Is you help kind of bridge that gap between NCAA holding their hands and everything to you being like, okay, let us help you figure this out as a professional.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of shared learning, and it's a culture that was very much individualistic. And now you have these women coming out of college used to having a team structure, and to be an independent is kind of daunting versus, you know, the older generation were independent and they could figure it out for themselves, and you didn't want to trade secrets. Now it's, you know, you need the resources to be able to afford it right now and be a sustainable professional athlete. So you need to have the coaching, the partnerships, the rehab, the, you know, strength and conditioning, health and wellness, everything like that.
So how does it work exactly? Like if I'm an athlete and I need this up, so how does it work? Like I find you guys, and then where do we go from there?
Yeah, I think it's all very individual. So drop us an email, find us on social. And we just sit down and kind of go through like what's working well for you and areas that you want to improve. Everyone's at a different stage. Everyone has different goals, access to resources or sponsorship. Right now, it's, I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how to make this happen during COVID, and weighing up the financial obligations of making a living, being able to come back to sport, and then maintaining their fitness. So a lot of people are taking time off. Some people are hybriding. Some people are still training a lot. So just understanding, I think, where everybody is at for their personal goals. It's not easy right now.
No.
I don't think there's anyone that will have the best answer, but I think it's definitely, you know, spending time to really look what drives an athlete, their personal goals, where they can financially leverage some things, or how they can make that sustainable.
Yeah. I feel like that's an aspect that's been missing in beach volleyball for so long. Cause I think we've mentioned this on a couple podcasts. It's like, I won a tournament. Where are the sponsors? You know? So I feel like any really promising up and coming player, you know, especially as we mentioned, the males could, like, this is kind of the educational aspect that no one really has any idea about, because we don't really, most of us don't have agents in this sport, which is you guys kind of bridging that gap to kind of find this market yourself.
For sure. And learning, like I worked with a sports agency last year a little bit to understand what happens in real sports agent relationships, which it doesn't happen in beach volleyball. But like what's so beautiful about beach volleyball athletes is you guys are so entrepreneurial. Like you really have figured out so much that most professional athletes never understand or have to manage or deal with. So you guys are highly intelligent, very self-sufficient. You're great brand representation, like naturally. You speak so eloquently, you understand kind of what you stand for. And it's not just the sport of beach volleyball, it's understanding how you contribute to your community, your society, you know, what your brand identity, I guess, is. I mean, most of you guys have had to figure that out on your own. So it's very easy to work with athletes to enhance and kind of consolidate thinking and make that work a little bit better. And just give the confidence, like, hey, yeah, you can do this, and this is how you can work with a brand, because brands are looking for athletes to be part of their family. I think it's transitioning from, oh, here's my product and my social media, to actually advocating for that brand and doing some goodwill initiatives. I mean, right now with COVID, a lot of online support or backing mental health or wellness. There's definitely a lot of initiatives out there.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna go try.
I'll go for it. I'll go after.
I feel like necessity begets creativity, and in beach volleyball, you have to be a good marketer of whatever brand it is that you're trying to promote, whether it's yourself, because I feel like beach volleyball is just like the Instagram sport. It's like beach volleyball, surfing, climbing, like all spots where you pretty much need sponsors to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, compare us to other sports. Let's just say Chase Budinger, right? He came from the NBA. He didn't give a crap about his social media. All of us are here scrambling for like a few hundred, 1,000 followers. If he would have started then, in my mind, he'd have a really big following and something that would have translated perfectly to here. But he didn't even think about it. I mean, I don't want to put words in chasing him.
Yeah.
From what I understand, it wasn't like a priority. And then when he came out here, now he's trying to build it so he can get those sponsors and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a huge challenge that our sport that you're presented with as an athlete it's this whole extra thing you have to worry about. And like, I'd love to not worry about it. I'd love to just focus 100% on my sport. But when I look at it in long term, like when I'm done with my career, I'm going to be so grateful for everything that I've learned and all the time I've invested in. You know, I didn't have an agent for a long time. And then I put in a lot of time and like really wanted to get the right one. And I finally found the guy, and I'm just so happy with who I have.
Yeah.
And my first thing I said in our meeting was, I don't want you to take the calls and do this and do that and everything. I want to be a part of all of that. I don't care if you're doing it, but I want to be on the calls. I want to learn how it works. I want to learn, you know, building the brand and blah, 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 all that stuff. Because my first few years, like Travis said, you win a tournament, where's the money? It's like, that's not how it works. You have to understand, like you said earlier, that you're now you're the brand's representation of their product, right? You're like presenting it to the world. So how do you do that? You might want to learn how to do public speaking, right? In case you're on camera like this or on a mic. And there's so many other things that you're going to want to learn. But at the end of the day, and a lot of people don't want to do it, but at the end of the day, at the end of the career, you're going to be like, wow, I have a lot of skill sets here that are going to translate perfectly to maybe another company or starting my own thing. Or, I mean, I'm already learning that, and I'm not even close to retiring. So it's, I think it's huge that you guys are going to be able to help people do that from early on in their careers. I was lucky enough to kind of expedite that by being picked up by John Hayden, who is, you know, one of the best professionals out there. And he kind of was open to anything and everything. I asked a lot of questions, and he taught me. I mean, I was asking him about like, well, what's leasing a car? Like, I didn't know anything about anything, you know? How to rent or buy a house, or how can I work towards this, or save for retirement? Like, why? You know, stuff that I can't believe we don't learn in high school or college.
Yeah.
But that's the real world, and that's the stuff that's valuable in the long run.
And it is like so valuable to learn that stuff, because if you look at almost, I mean, every other professional sport that I can think of, it like all of that stuff, most of that stuff is done for you. And so that's a lot of the issues that these like NBA guys or NFL, Major League Baseball players, they come out of their career, they retire out, and then they're like, what do I do now? Like, how do I even access my retirement? How do I do this? How do I do that? And you're like, beach volleyball athletes, you have to learn that along the way, else you're going to sink. So
Travis just read Tony Robbins' book on finance, and I'm 3/4 the way through it. I'm just loving it. Knowledge is power, people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've just been gone like full on reading mode during the quarantine, and so I've just been giving out books left and right. Like Delaney's little brother's like, all right, what book this week? And so I just dropped the book off.
I love it.
For me, it's like, what book this 2 months? It takes me not that long to get through one.
Yeah.
But it really
For me, it's every week. I'm like, I have a new one and I have a new goal. I'm going to read so many pages, and then I read a chapter. I'm like, oh, I want to read this one. Or even often another podcast thing that has popped up, which has been super cool. And I think that's a good message for a lot of pro athletes right now, is there's a lot of companies that are doing a lot of free webinars on like building your personal brand, engaging your followers. I mean, those are things you have to be proactive in your own and responsible for your own career, and spend time investing in them. And it does take some time, but I mean, some of the things that you learn really do turn around and benefit you in the long run, because simply understanding even 3 unique points why a brand should work with you. It could be something like, I'm clean eater, I'm adventurous, I'm a travel junkie, whatever they are, starts to help those brands affiliate with you. If you have that strong, clear messaging, and it's happening all the time casually anyways, you're just organizing your thinking to make it very attractive for brands to engage with you.
And you want to write your own narrative. You don't want others to write it for you, because that makes your life so much easier. And when you speak, you can just speak honestly, because your brand matches perfectly with that. And you're not trying to speak to like, oh, I'm supposed to be this guy, I'm supposed to act this certain way. So just understanding that and then putting out the right authentic brand of yourself is huge, just in being happy and enjoying your job and the day to day.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing a lot of the bigger athletes do that too. I mean, with the Players Tribune that Derek Jeter founded, a lot of guys are taking to telling their stories on that instead of, giving it to someone else in the media. And then you're losing control of how that's interpreted. And I know that Aaron Rodgers, he's been blasted in stories in newspapers and stuff. And he's like, well, that wasn't what we talked about in the interview at all. So what he's done is he records every interview and puts it up on his own podcast. So if it gets taken out of context, he's like, gotcha. Like, everyone can hear the interview. So a lot of athletes are taking control of their own narrative, either through like Instagram, Twitter, writing their own blogs, which Sarah Sponsel is doing a phenomenal job of doing now. There's a lot of resources out there that it's not super hard if you just take a couple minutes to kind of figure out how to do it.
And you don't have to do it like the other players. Like, you don't have to come up and make a podcast. Like, that's something that, like, wow, I didn't think I liked this. But then I started doing the broadcasting. I was like, I kind of enjoy it. I like speaking freely about my sport. I just need someone who can organize my thoughts a little bit. So then I got Travis, who could make the conversations flow really nicely and know all the facts and ins and outs of the sport. So, I mean, it can happen authentically. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to do what any other player is doing. You can just do something, build something off the court. And that will be, in my experience, a complete multiplier of whatever you do on the court. Like, I mean, I have the most amazing sponsorship team right now, and I'm super lucky for that. But I don't think that I would have been able to put them all together, definitely not Wilson, if I hadn't been doing this kind of stuff off the court.
And I think that's the key take home there, Tri, is you have to be active in your own personal brand. Like, you can't just sit by and think it's going to happen to you. You have to participate. You have to engage in social media or comment or repost and do these things. And it is work, but it is part of your job of building your brand to make your beach volleyball, dreams sustainable as well. I'm curious to know what you guys think about the NCAA name and likeness campaign that might be coming in the future.
I haven't heard much about it. Can you give us a rundown of what kind of key takeaways or bullet points?
Basically, an athlete will be able to use their own name to go after or get individual sponsorships. NCAA hasn't really put a lot of framework around it. They've kind of left it up to the individual conferences, as far as I know, to write up their own rules. It's supposed to go into effect January 2021. I haven't seen anything that's pushed back. But essentially, it's just saying that, like, let's say, I don't know, some random kid on a college campus has 10,000 Instagram followers, and they're able to go get these sponsorship deals and use their account to get some extra income. But an athlete who's got that same number of followers isn't able to do that because it's conflict of whatnot with their sports team. And so I think that probably how it's going to shake out is that they can't have any conflicting sponsors like shoes or apparel, or the headline sponsors for an organization, like maybe the banks, or I don't know what exactly is going to go into things that they can't touch on. But I think like the smaller restaurants that are around university, I wouldn't be surprised if they start picking up athletes and giving them small, $1,000 here to come and do a showing or sign a couple balls or something like that. But it's going to be really interesting, especially in beach volleyball, with the individual nature of the sport, that potentially those sponsors could carry on into their professional careers if it's working well. And that even works better for those small restaurants. Let's say like a LSU pizza joint that picks up like Claire or Kristen, and then sponsors them throughout their now 5th year. They graduate out and go on the AVP tour, but they can come back and be the professional athletes that are affiliated with this restaurant. I don't know. I think it's a pretty cool opportunity for these kids that are now just going into to college.
Yeah, like I'm like a capitalist through and through. So I think if you can make money off your own brand and your own work, like that is awesome. But just from what I've seen of the overall ineptitude of the NCAA to do anything, that it's going to be so thorny and hairy. Cause like say, you know, Try is a quarterback at USC and, you know, he can make $50,000 a game by wearing an armband that says Brothers Burritos or whatever, you know. But you know, Meg, you are and say that Try, like you're not actually a very good quarterback, right? And then Meg, you are the number one defender at LSU. You're Kristen Nuss, right? But you know that pizza joint can only pay you $20 a match. Then the whole thing about equality starts coming into play, and I think that it's probably going to cause so much discussion and a lot of heated discussion, but I'm totally in favor of athletes being able to make money. Cause I mean, I've seen athletes making money at the college level. Like I covered AAU basketball for 5 years. And if you're telling me that college basketball players don't make money, like you're just turning a blind eye to the reality of it.
Yeah.
So I like that they're going to regulate it and it won't be so black market now. Because it's happening regardless. So the NCAA may as well set some regulations so it's not as volatile as it has been.
The one thing that I am a little more concerned about is the separation of the haves and the have-nots in terms of, like, let's say I'm John Cook in Nebraska and I can negotiate with all those little places around Lincoln. And then I'm offering to a recruit to say, hey, come here, here's a full scholarship. And I can also guarantee you that you'll get $30,000 from XYZ. And we'll just slot that for you for your 4 years that you're here. So I'm curious how that'll work out and how that'll be kind of, I don't know. It's not the simple way of just, Instagram, little pizza joint, but I don't know. I don't know if we'll run into that in beach volleyball as much as the football and basketball programs. Well, obviously not.
Right. Each school has their own personal brands. Like you can't sign with Adidas and then go play at USC, right?
That's what I think that the apparel brands will definitely be off the table.
Like a school like USC, LSU, like, I mean, their football programs, which if you sponsor the football team, you sponsor their whole athletic department. I mean, they have almost every category, you know, like Muscle Milk, Coca-Cola, Powerade. I guess that's Coca-Cola, but I mean, we had everything at USC. I guess, yeah, you could get a pizza joint sponsorship, which I think it'd be amazing. Like 1,000% I'd support that, but I do see that there'd be a lot of issues there, especially with like recruiting. Like recruiting using sponsorships would be such a mess.
I think that's probably where the biggest thing will come into play is recruiting. Cause I've seen cases where, so right now you obviously can't pay athletes, right? But I've seen cases where a football school in the SEC had like these big money donors who were saying, I will pay you $20,000 to mow my lawn once a week.
Right.
And like that brings athletes in. Right. And so, they ended up like busting the school, and the guy was like, what? It's my lawn. I get to pay. I think they're doing $20,000 worth of work, and it creates this thorny issue. So I think that like I'm all in favor of it, but I think that if it drops January 2021, I don't think we'll actually have like a smooth resolution for how to go about it till maybe 26.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But I love it
though. Guy's lawn. Straight mow boy.
I'll tee up LA 28 pretty well though, you know?
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting how it all impacts at home for the Olympics.
Yeah. I'm just so interested just with how the world is going right now. Just, you know, because this is not, I can't imagine that this will be the last time that we have a pandemic type situation till like the 2028 Olympics. Like, what is LA 2028 going to look like? I'm so interested. Like, that's 8 years from now. And we're seeing how big the world's changed in 6 months.
I mean, we're just glad that we took that 2028 bid instead of the 2024 one. Because that's right? And LA said, we'll take the 28 bid if you guarantee it for us. Paris has got to be not too stoked on this.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Now I know that Try, you got daddy duty coming up, and ladies, I know you have to be running soon-ish. But I did want to mention that you guys are so cool because you're providing opportunities for beach volleyball players to expand their brands and to make money in the process. I think what you do with the blogging and the mentorship program is awesome. If you want to shed a little bit of light on that and how that works.
Yeah, go for it, Michelle.
I guess in terms of the Pro Athlete Mentorship program is something we just launched about a month ago. Well, I guess going back to when we founded the company a year ago, one of our ideas as beach clubs have grown exponentially over the past decade, and now they're all over the country. Built for purpose facilities are popping up every year. We've got, I think, about 300 to 400 beach clubs across the country, which is very cool. A lot of those clubs, they don't have access to our pro athletes in the same way that, we've all lived or still live in Hermosa Beach. You just walk down to the beach and you can see everyone training there and, stop by and watch and get that experience for the kids that are coming up. But for the ones in South Dakota, let's say, like, they don't really get that same kind of inspirational pipeline of being able to interact with a professional athlete. So our idea was first to bring the athletes in to run a clinic or camp in front of the AVP events, with the idea that athlete comes in, runs a camp, then all the kids could go and cheer on their pro athlete at the tournament that comes up. And that athlete could get their own little fan club of the local kids from the club, and the kids feel like they're part of something. So as we all know, the AVP is on hold right now. And so we launched our Pro Athlete Mentorship program, which is kind of the same idea, but instead using video conference calls for clubs or even individuals to kind of gain an insight into what it looks like to be a professional beach athlete, what the pathway looks like, and kind of to build that aspiration. Meg, I don't know if you got anything to add there.
Yeah, I think it's connecting the community. I think they're, from working with a lot of the younger athletes, they couldn't name many other professional athletes outside the historic top few. And it's like, we have so many amazing athletes out there that they could really follow along, be part of their story. Again, sharing those pro athlete brands with the kids that are coming up for their inspiration, for their motivation, to be able to touch them. I think something so unique about beach volleyball athletes is when you go to an event, well, in the past, you could be courtside, you could go up to them after the match. I mean, what other professional event can you be right there in the box nearly with the athletes? I mean, it's such an incredible, unique aspect of our sport and the culture of beach volleyball that if we can make that connection happen, especially on the guys' side, I mean, they really, that affinity keeps them involved in the game. So we wanted to keep the circle of life, I guess, going and help those that are looking to go to college or that are struggling or that are from out of state, like Maryland or Hawaii, how they make it happen, which is really inspiring because there's a fit for everybody out there.
And I think to add on to that as well, for the growth of professional beach volleyball, I think one thing that is lacking that Megan kind of touched on there is the idea of this like fansmanship, that like, because all 95% of professional beach athletes live in Hermosa, Manhattan Beach, in that South Bay, LA area, it's hard for the rest of the country to connect in with the athletes in an intimate way. Like, for example, I mean, I grew up in Santa Cruz. I'm a San Francisco Giants fan, not because I know really anyone on the team, but because that's where I grew up. And so I have this, that's my baseball team. And we don't have that same kind of thing in beach volleyball because just most people live in LA. And so hopefully by building camps and clinics, and athletes can start in time, potentially affiliating with the club that's outside of South Bay and all around the country, that those clubs will then, look at that athlete, that'll be like the role model for these kids, and then they'll follow them, their local community, their parents and whatnot, and build the athlete's brand, as well as just a little bit more excitement of like this is my team, or this is my pair that I follow around the country or watch all their matches or whatnot.
Yeah, I think it solves a lot of problems that this sport has. One that you mentioned, Michelle, that there's no like local affiliation to any athletes. Although you guys have the entire state of Hawaii rooting for all you outrigger kids. And I think one of the problems that you solve is when people are like, well, how do you be a professional beach volleyball player? Like my brothers ask me this all the time. Like, what do people do to like survive as a professional beach volleyball player? And now you're giving everyone the opportunity to talk to a Sarah Hughes, a Therese Cannon, a Tri Bourne, and we're like, how do you do this? How do you get a partner? Where do you train? Where do you live? What do you do for money when the tournament prize money isn't rolling in? And I think it's an awesome opportunity, not only for the athletes to be a mentor, but for anyone who wants to take this sport relatively seriously to kind of really learn how to do so.
Yeah. I think it also helps on the growth of coach development too. So as all these clubs are popping up across the country, which is awesome, there's a lot of people coming from indoor, or dads volunteering, that every time they have access to somebody very knowledgeable in beach, they're learning so much that's making a direct impact on the kids. Because we don't have that apprenticeship kind of shadowing experience to be a beach volleyball coach. You are now a college beach volleyball coach. All other sports, you're the GA, you volunteer, you're the assistant coach, and then maybe someday you'll be the head coach. Well, it's happening overnight, and the access to learning how to give feedback, how to pace training, how to manage 2 athletes, 4 athletes, 6, 10, 20, a whole club, is all very meaningful for the growth and sustainability of the sport.
Yeah, it's definitely, it can be valuable from every point of view. I think, like, thinking of it from a professional standpoint is we want to have an impact on people, so for sure building a fan base for yourself is super important. And if you can have an impact, like I tried to do some clinics in Hawaii. I've done them a few times. I've found out how difficult it is to put a clinic on yourself, but definitely all the pros want to give back, and they want to have a good impact on this sport, and it's just a matter of kind of connecting the dots, I think, which is cool that you guys are trying to do that.
And so where can people find you guys to get in touch if either they are an athlete who wants to help either like with blogs or be a mentor, or if they are an up-and-comer who wants to maybe either join the mentorship program or just see what kind of services you guys offer?
Yeah, they can visit us at www.beachvolleyballconsulting.com, or you can follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or you can send us an email at hello@beachvolleyballconsulting.com. And we can't wait to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, I will be sensitive to everyone's time here and let everyone go, but it has been a pleasure volley nerding out. Meg, we'll have to catch up.
Thanks,
and
guys.
Michelle, you too.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right, everyone.
Thanks.
Catch y'all.
Ciao.